Hi, my name is Reverend John Stanley, and you are watching Ordinary People. Our today's guest is Pat Scogan, who is a soil sifter, has been on the Farmers Union, and has even run for state senate. Before we meet with Pat, I want to talk about the power of one, as Pat is one person. The whole reason we have these interviews is so that you can see what one individual is doing and how they are affecting our lives here in Wisconsin. So the power of one. Now, I'm not going to go all philosophical or start meditating, but one can be extremely, extremely powerful. Indeed, you get one crack in your windshield and it can ruin your morning. Or you see one pigeon and all of a sudden you see a whole flock of them, or a seagull coming down to steal your popcorn. One can be the beginning of many, which is why it's so powerful. Indeed, one can become one group, one action, one movement. And that is a secret tool of organizing and networking, is that the power of one is potential, like one seed that becomes one tree. It starts out very tiny and it grows into something much bigger. So as we're listening to Pat, think about her oneness and how she became more powerful and grew as she became and honed her skills as an activist. I'm John Stanley, and you are watching Ordinary People. Hello, and as promised, here is Pat Scogan. Thank you, Pat, for agreeing to be interviewed. I'm going to start with a easy question, and that is, how long have you been an activist?
I've been an activist most of my life.
Most of your life.
An active activist, but in my head, I was always an activist. Started really early with my parents. I was raised Catholic by my mother, and she gave me a little Mary Knoll magazine every month. And in it, there were examples of priests who at that time, during the 60s and 70s, were working with liberation theology in Central America. So I was following their stories. So even though I didn't know that that's what it was preparing me for a life of activism.
Wow. So can you recall what your first volunteer action was?
I do. I was a sophomore at UROC in Janesville, and our chorus teacher hooked us up with a group called Project Self-Help and Awareness. This was a group led in Wisconsin by John Kinsman from Laval. And it was in coalition with a group of Jesuit seminarians who had been involved in freedom rides and things like that during the 60s. And it was kind of an outgrowth of that. But what John did is he would get groups of college students to go to rural Mississippi near Greenwood. And we would go down there during our Christmas or Easter or summer breaks and work on community projects. And then in the summertime, kids from Mississippi, he would drive a school bus to Mississippi, and all of these young Black children would come up to Wisconsin and spend the summer on a farm. And sometimes they went home with a Holstein calf for their families, so they would have eventually get milk. So it was a give and take sharing program between these two things. And for a girl who grew up in rural Wisconsin, going to live with a Black family in Mississippi was quite an eye-opening experience and a wonderful one.
I am flabbergasted. That is not anything that I would have expected, but it is really impressive. And it, if you don't mind me saying it, kind of, you've given your age away.
Oh, it was 1972, and I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. Yeah. So I made 3 trips to Mississippi with John Kinsman and Project Self-Help and Awareness. And that let me see that, yes, I could make a difference. It might just be helping dig a ditch so that a fairly simple septic system or water line could be brought into a house. It might be collecting recyclable materials so that I could help I was an education major at the time, so I could help a Head Start teacher develop materials for her classroom made out of recycled objects. So it was that kind of a thing, but it gave me that idea that I could do something that would be.
The more we talk, the more I learn about you, the more impressed I am.
Thank
So,
you.
what organizations have you been belonged to? I imagine there's an extensive list.
Well, I did get my degree in teaching in special ed, and I started teaching at Clinton High School, my alma mater, which was kind of one of those, what was that show about the guy who goes back to his own classroom to teach, because that's where I graduated from high school. But I was with an inspired group of teachers who were instrumental in getting the Wisconsin law for the handicapped passed, 94-142 in Wisconsin, Education for All Handicapped Children Act. And so I was part of a team that wrote the first book on how to write an IEP for DPI. So that was exciting. So I was a teacher for 27 years in lots of different school districts. But then I retired in 2007. And so I belonged to NEA at that time and WEA, the Wisconsin Education Association. My mother had been a negotiator for the teachers at Clinton. One of the first acts I remember doing was helping her pack food boxes to send to the Hortonville strike.
Wow, amazing! And
I don't even remember what year that was because I was a kid.
And yeah. I came in much later on your farm union work and your soil sister age. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet. So in 2001, my husband and I and our two kids bought a farm in Sauk County. So we moved quite a bit north. And at that time I was living in Iowa County. I moved to Sauk County. And I'd been going to Bob Fest for several years, which was wonderful. Was inspired by Bernie Sanders when he would speak there. Started going to the Grassroots Network festivals. And then we were certified as an organic dairy farm. And then 2008 came. And that was right around the time I retired from teaching. So then I was a full-time dairy farmer. And we were absolutely crushed by the falling milk prices that were like they had been in the 70s, when a family farm really could afford to send their kids to college without a loan.
Yeah,
and the price for milk was exactly the same as it was back then. But of course, everything else went up in price. So I had been part of Farmers Union. I started being involved with Wisconsin Farmers Union in 2007. I had a young daughter, and because we didn't make much money, Farmers Union has a wonderful summer camp called Camp Kenwood up near Chippewa Falls. And it only costs like $100 to send your kid to camp for a week. And I was like, this sounds like a good deal. Of course, I had to find out what this organization was before I sent my but so I started getting their newsletter and learning about them. And the more I read, the more I liked. And so by the time Autumn graduated from high school, I had already had, how many years? 6 years into Farmers Union activity. I became the Sauk County president of Farmers Union. And at that time, we were still in the dairy crisis. Now we're talking about 2012, 9, 10, 12, all those years, very hard years. I went to Washington for the legislative fly-in with Farmers Union. I went to a national convention as a delegate for Wisconsin Farmers Union. And I was doing 7 farmers markets in 5 days.
And can you tell us a little bit about the Soil Sisters? Because I've always wanted to ask you about that. Go ahead.
So, Farmers Union had a women's leadership conference. And at that conference, I just happened to meet Sarah Lloyd from Columbia County. and Donna Neuwirth from Sauk County, Lisa Kivrist from Greene County, Chris Marion later from Greene County. And we all had this idea that if women farmers could get together and share ideas, not in a competitive way, but it just in not feeling so isolated, just to have a group of people we could talk to, ask questions, learn from, we would all be a lot better off. Because frankly, back then, and still sometimes, women farmers aren't taken very seriously.
There's so many questions I want to ask you, but I mean, unfortunately time keeps us from, and I feel like we've been talking for a minute and I just looked and we, go ahead.
I felt this wonderful sisterhood, and that is exactly what it is. It's a once a month potluck where we get together and talk. It's also a listserv where we can have wonderful discussions via email about all kinds of topics. And we do some activism. Chris Marion, one of the founding members of the Greene County part and founder of that chapter of Farmers Union, decided to run for state senate against Howard Marklein in the 17th in 2016. She didn't win, but boy, did she gain notoriety. And I was one part of her kitchen cabinet. At that time, I decided it was about time I joined the Democratic Party since she was a candidate for them. Before that, I had never been a party person, John. I hadn't been a party person. I was just an activist.
Yeah, Bernie did that to me. That's how I got into the party. Is he, is get involved. If you don't like something, change it.
I took Bernie's advice on that. That is exactly how I got.
And you ran yourself as a candidate.
Well, yes, I did in 2022, and because I was asked. And isn't that the truth? Especially for women candidates, it seems that sometimes we just need to be asked. Somebody needs to have confidence in us. And that was you. And that was my Greene County chair, Sandy Rindy. It was Mark Pocan calling me and saying, I think you can do it. So, and I did run. I didn't win, but I kept the 40%. I kept the 40%. And that's sometimes what I think we who start to feel hopeless miss, is that we keep the ball rolling. Sometimes it feels like a big boulder we're trying to push uphill, but we keep it going. We keep people involved. We keep them interested and learning. And slowly, things will change.
And I was going to ask you about that. Do you feel like you're making a difference? Do you feel like what you do, does anything? Because I do personally. I really do. But I want to ask you your personal experience.
I do. And this last 2 years since I ran for state senate, my role has changed. I had gone all the way up into leadership in the party to being the chair of the 2nd Congressional District for Mark Pocan. I did that for 4 years.
Imagine that. Somebody must have really thought you were a great person to do that.
I told them I would do it. So sometimes being the chair of something is not always the most exciting thing, but it was exciting because I got to see how the party worked. I got to see its strengths. I got to see its flaws, and that's a good thing. But I decided after that, this last spring, that I was not going to run for another term. I wanted to just get back to my activist roots. I've been doing a lot of farm advocacy all those years. And so I just really wanted to get back to doing that. Plus doing some things that other people do, like watercolor painting, visiting my grandchildren, things like that. So I settled in Monroe after we sold our farm in 2014. And the thing that I just found out last April, was it April 4th or March 4th, we had the big rallies in April and it was terrible weather. And over a year ago. And I went to the rally just as an observer, because I didn't know that many people. And my goodness, they put on a rally and it was all people I didn't know. John, do you realize how long it's been in our progressive community that I don't know somebody at all? And
Isn't
here they
that
all these
amazing?
people in Monroe that I didn't know, but they're doing something. They're putting on a rally, and it was wonderful. They were singing, and we were marching, and we had signs. And I decided, okay, one of my touchwords is, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? And I thought, we have a neat little coffee shop starting up in Monroe, and I can sit there every Monday night from 6 till 7 and see if anybody wants to come and just talk, have a civil, civic conversation. And so that's what I started doing. I got a few friends who would come in every now and then. We started with 4 people, 6 people, 8 people, some young people, some older people. And now it's a standing group of about between 10 to 20 people will show up. Sometimes 30 people show up. We've had candidates in to speak. We've planned every rally. It's our 50-51 group comes. We've started little free food pantries. We've collected hats and mittens and socks for veterans. It's a wonderful community group. And that's what it is building that community. And it's not, John, I got to give you a good quote that I came up with, that I just heard the other day. In leadership, in servant leadership, we step aside as leaders to make space for other new leaders to step up. And so I guess I'm at that point in my life where it's not that I'm going to stop being active. It's that I'm stepping back to let new leadership have their turn. They need their turn to learn how to be a leader.
And that's so true.
To learn to be a leader.
But you're there too to guide the new leadership.
They call me
what
the
we do.
historian.
But you touched on something that I have to go back to, and that is is that activism. That's how the revolution started in France, is by the student cafes, by people meeting, by the sharing of ideas, by the, and I'm not suggesting that we, start getting the guillotine, although, no, but it's that there's a power in numbers, and there's a power with people, and that resistance, if we don't do anything else, we put up resistance. If you can imagine what this country would be if it wasn't for the people. If we weren't out there protesting, if we weren't out there with our voice. And that is, I thank you for the work you do, because that is so powerful.
It's an important lesson in community that I learned from Jane Farwell at Folklore Village, with whom I worked for many years. And she believed that when you have an event, or when you have any kind of a community that forms, before the evening is over, in some way, you let everyone there know that it could not have happened without them. That they were an integral part of whatever good came out of that evening, what sense of community. And I think, we think back to Paul Wellstone, and we all do better when we all do better. And it's that same feeling of, we need to feel like we have a purpose and a place. And sometimes that making space.
And I'm going to have to stop you there. That's our cuckoo letting us know that we've gone over our time. But again, I wanted to thank you for coming and talking to us about your experience as an activist. So thank you so much.
You bet. I always love talking to you, John.
And I love talking to you too. So this has been Pat Scogan with Ordinary People. This is John Stanley again. I decided that we need to continue. We had a little off the camera conversation. Just things are so interesting. So I am going to ask you the question, Pat. how many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? I loved your answer. So please enlighten us.
Well, John, a man must walk down the quickest path he can that leads to a wise woman.
I thought that was a fantastic. We had to continue this interview because the answers were so. Could you tell us about the tool set the skill set?
Oh,
yes.
Prior to being an activist, I was recounting the story of Mrs. Van Horn, my 10th grade speech teacher at Clinton High School, who taught us to do our research, write well, stand steady, and then speak clearly with conviction. And so when I was running for office, that I kept those words in my mind. I planted my feet in a way that I wouldn't lose my balance. And I had to make sure that I believed everything I said and that it was accurate. And then I spoke with conviction. And I think that's the best advice I can give a new candidate, together with one other piece. Think about your own integrity. Think about where you really stand, how honest you really feel you can be. And it's okay to say, I can't be honest about this or that, but know it. Know it in your guts. The other thing is how much energy you've got. Recognize that there may be things you couldn't do. I had to say, I can't go door to door. The knees aren't going to take it. I can't do the canvassing. I'll depend on all of you to help me with canvassing, but I'll do all the other stuff. The other thing is, make sure you've got a safe person. It might not be your spouse. In fact, it probably won't be, because they're going to be helping you hold up the rest of your life while you're running for office. But have at least one safe person where you can go to laugh, to cry, to complain, who is not involved in your campaign. A safe place where you can go to be your own person and gather strength and recharge your batteries. Very important.
I had other people watch your interview on Wisconsin Eye, and they told me that they were so blown away by, because you spoke with conviction, and you spoke with authority, because you knew what you were talking about. And it's,
And being honest, I remember that interview because she asked me a question about money going to Milwaukee. And I was like, again, drawing from that well that I'd already decided how honest I could be. My answer was, I'd be willing to listen to anybody who knows more about Milwaukee than I do, because I'm from rural Wisconsin and that's who I represent. And so that's one of those times when I need to be quiet and listen and learn and then come up with the answer.
I really would like to know who is the most, in your life as an activist, who is the most impressive person you've met?
I would have to say John Kinsman was inspirational. Oh, well, John, there's just so many people. When I think of the holding down Wisconsin Farmers Union and Family Farm Defenders, John Peck, Joel Greeno, Mary Doherty with Sustain Rural Wisconsin Network, a water warrior. She's up in Bayfield and she is holding the line on all the things happening up there, but she's also drawing in all the people from Crawford Stewardship Project, all the people fighting for data centers, against data centers, or lines, or corporate wind farms, and things that are looking at our beautiful driftless and thinking of tearing it apart. Midwest environmental advocates, so many inspirational people doing this work. We are not alone. We have to find each other perhaps, but we are not alone.
Which brings up a really good question, because, when we are out there, when we are working, there's so much that you get burnt out really easily because there's just, it feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, even though you're just trying to maybe take one bite of much larger picture. What do you do to keep yourself from being burnt out? What are things that you do? I mean, like you mentioned, when you were running for office, you had a save person, and that person kept your sanity, helped you keep your sanity. What are
I
other
love
things you
playing Ticket to Ride with my cousin.
do?
I've started watercoloring and I love it. And I love my gardening. I'm no longer farming, but I'm still doing gardening and loving flowers and painting them. I have grandchildren. And I babysit for one of my soil sisters one morning a week. And I love it. I love being 3-year-old with 3-year-olds and 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds. They recharge my batteries like nothing else because, I get to be a child again is one part of it. But they are so free with their hugs. They are so free with their opinions on things and noticing small things. And there's also that feeling that you're giving something to them, not to mention that you're giving their mother a good rest.
Yes. So you're still doing good works even in
I
recharging
really
yourself.
feel like I am, and I will keep doing that because that is what keeps my batteries charged. I think also though being realistic and realizing when is it time to like I said before, let someone else carry the responsibility. I'm still there. They still know I'll get up and speak. They still know I'll put the posters up. They still know I'll show up. But I don't have to do it all. Other people can help do it. And that empowers them. That's another thing I learned from Jane. She would say, just go out and get people to put on an apron and start setting the table. Oh, you mean we don't have to have it all ready for them? No, because by putting out the tablecloths and setting up the candles and setting the table, they are involved. It is now their dinner, not just us putting on a show.
That's a fantastic idea because it is true. You incorporate other people and you have a sense of community that way. So
that was one of my Jane Farwell lessons.
That's very, very good lesson to learn, and a very great tool for any person who's an activist and networking with others. What, and I think this should be the last question. Maybe we'll do 2 more because I'd like to end on a positive note. My next question was, what is your greatest concern? What do you rather, I don't know if I want to use the word fear, but what worries you the most?
I guess as an issue, that would be education, because I was a teacher. I still am a teacher. And the role of public education, especially, I think we've completely lost sight, not completely. So many of us have lost sight and allowed the voices that are saying, oh, it costs too much money, it raises our taxes, it's this, it's that, it's a parent's choice. And they're forgetting the very purpose of an educated public sustains a democracy.
Indeed. In fact,
bottom line.
That's why they didn't want slaves to read, is because knowledge is power.
And we have forgotten that, or put it on the back burner, or just haven't been promoting that. And so having an equitable, free, appropriate education for all people, whether you're going to preschool or whether you're going to college or tech school, needs to be part of what builds a whole human being who is able to participate in a democracy. I really firmly believe that. And so that is a big concern of mine. The other one, John, that I have to mention, and this goes back to my farming roots, which is food sovereignty. Food sovereignty, protection of the land, learning to feed our food shed. Think of a watershed. In every watershed, it reaches for many miles outward from the actual river or stream. Wisconsin, we could feed the people in our watershed. That's our food shed. We might have to get over the idea that we can have strawberries in December, but we could feed our watershed. And the idea that that is happening all over the world through efforts like Family Farm Defenders is really important to me.
And yet we waste 60% of our food. And I mean, it's just amazing. So I will ask this question as the last question, and that would be,
Okay.
What advice would you give those who might want to be an activist but don't know how to start? And also, I'm going to put a little curve on that and say, also, what advice would you give somebody who is running for an office in Wisconsin? So 2 different questions with the same root. Go ahead.
I think I go back to that point I made a little earlier. I think I made it of what is mine to do.
Yeah.
If I'm an artist, make art. If I can sing or play an instrument, be a song leader or sing your song into YouTube. If you are a writer, write your poetry or write your news story. If you are an activist and you love going out and meeting people, go out and meet as many people as you can and keep talking to them and keep listening to them, because listening, I think, is undervalued, especially when everybody can have a Substack or a YouTube page. It's important that we learn to really listen to what people are saying and to dig a little deeper and understand where they're coming from by listening. So that's that part. Advice for running for office. I don't remember if I said this before, John, but I talked about be confident, not in a stubborn way, but be confident about what your positions are, your integrity, how much energy you have, and then having a safe person to rest with. Those are the ingredients I would say are the best things to prepare somebody to be a good public servant.
And you give me the opportunity to quote a Jewish proverb, because the proverb is that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should listen twice as much as you speak. And I think that's a good note to end this interview on. And thank you for staying afterwards. I asked you for 15 minutes. We've gone over 15 minutes. So thank you, Pat. And this is Pat Scogan with Ordinary People. I'm John Stanley, and I hope you enjoyed our program. Thank you.